right, council, please come to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mandy, can you please call the roll?
DeYoung.
Here.
Branderhorst. Here. Danstra.
Here.
Eva.
Here.
Hopkins.
Here.
Sporer. Here.
Those of you attending via the telephone, you will be able to provide verbal comments during the dedicated public forums and public hearings. I would ask that you please keep your microphones or telephones on mute until the time at which you wish to speak. I need approval of the tentative agenda, noting that item L1, the closed session, has been pulled from the agenda. So do I have a motion for approval of the tentative agenda as amended?
So moved.
Branderhorst, Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Branderhorst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Sporer. Yes. DeYoung.
Yes.
Danstra.
Yes.
Eva.
Motion passed. Okay, at this time, we have a public forum for anyone wishing to address the council regarding any items on the agenda. If you want to do that, please come forward, state your name and address, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Jim Johnson. I'm at 300 East 3rd Street. I'm on the trustee board at First Baptist Church. And I just have something quick here concerning Pella Fiber. We've been pursuing that, and we've realized that the rates for the church are classified as business, and we think the council should reconsider that. One example here is for 1 gigabyte service for residential, that's $75 a month. The same speed service for business is $500. For a small church like ours and a lot of the small churches, we just can't afford that. And we believe that maybe we should have a different designation or be designated residential. Like a lot of the churches, we do live streaming of our service on Sundays. That's probably one of the larger consumptions, if you will, of the internet. Aside from that, we're not like a business with business software and things like that. We send out emails to our congregation on various things, like I'm sure a lot of the churches do. So I guess what I'm saying is we would appreciate it. I think a lot of the churches would, if you could consider putting us in a residential type of environment for the Pella Fiber. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we will discuss.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, somebody. We got it.
Hi, my name is Jameson Rosine. I live at 912 Fountain View Drive. I have 2 small children and a wife, so I'm growing a family here in town. And because of that, I'm here to speak for an agenda item that you have about the indoor recreation facility. I just wanted to communicate how that would benefit my personal situation as well as many others that I'm friends with in a similar young families. The recreation center offers a lot of that pieces that Pella, in our opinion, is missing. The pool is a large one. The open ball courts, basketball courts would be another. I was raised in a small community like Pella, and basketball courts allow the tournaments to be played. I was on traveling basketball teams. Because of those tournaments, we went to those towns that were able to host those larger tournaments, and therefore the economy boost to those towns because we're there all day, possibly the weekend, requiring either an overnight stay, but definitely breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner. what this offers my family as well is another outlet for the kids for rainy, snow, or cold weather days. If you think about what Pella has to offer today during inclement weather when the kids can't be outside, it's really in your living rooms. There's not much beyond library and church opportunities, and this would satisfy that. In addition to that, I think it can bring forth a lot of job opportunities, but also make it attractive for clubs and birthday parties and other ideas for those to go into that location. I think that's part of the presentation. That's all.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Mansfield, and I live at 904 West 5th. And I guess a couple things as they're going to be discussed. Some of you know my selfish ulterior motive for Pella is to create a place for all and really focus on placemaking, a place that's for everyone's health, happiness, well-being, and attracts people. I'm also a realtor, and one of the things I find, and it's causing some people to choose not to live in Pella. They're like, oh, it's so cute, we appreciate the small town values and this and that, but they're missing something. And I think it all ties back to that. And as we talk about the rec center and the arts, and I think it's not a one or the other. And I sometimes, hear that it's either the art center or this rec center. I think those both are absolutely detrimental in attracting workforce and retaining them. Indoor rec facility, that's huge. We have a lot to do in the summer, but as somebody who, involved in triathlons and cycles and, I would love a place to go work out inside where I don't freeze. I can't handle winter in Iowa. So, but just as we move forward with that, just realize, take into consideration a bigger picture of really what, not one, but both of those things are going to bring to this community as just a sense of culture that's kind of fizzling. Pella was established as a place for all to come, feel a part of it, and have these amenities and freedom. And I just want to make sure that, as my beloved council members, that you are taking that into consideration for the importance of the rec center and establishing a culture of art. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith Oxburg, 224 South Street. As far as the rec center, I believe we had a building here a year or so ago, and it went broke. There wasn't enough citizens we're going to hire help, right, for this rec center? How are we going to pay for the help? The base population of Pella, is it enough to support? How many dollars is it going to be per person that doesn't even attend this, that they're going to have to come in? I think, where are you going to get the money? It's for me and you. So, I think we really ought to, if you had the money, yeah, that'd be cool. But let's first get the money before we spend money like that. And, people from out of town want to come, that's fine, but what about the people in town? Do we support this? I think you need to get more input from more citizens before we go too far forward. Because like I said, we had a building, the guy went broke. He said he couldn't even pay the insurance, he couldn't pay the help. We just don't have enough citizens to support a facility. Now, how big a facility is this? Is designed for what size of town? Facility you put forward. What population is it designed for? Does it meet our population? There's a lot of things we need to know before we go too far forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Chad Versteeg. I live at 1907 West 4th Street. And I think that this rec center would be a fantastic enhancement for our community. It would do good things for the businesses that I'm involved in, as far as bringing other people into town. I know that had my children, and they were talking about the sports park that is now the Ball Diamonds. I kind of thought, well, that's going to be, my children will be long gone before they get to use it. And then I had grandchildren. So that kind of, I've been to that facility a lot in the summertime. And that's going to, and I'm going to be doing that for years. This rec center, I am for it, but I'm for the arts as well. I think if just like was spoken, we need to make sure that it's good for our community first, and then take into consideration what it will bring from outside money. There's going to be issues with finding help. Everybody in town feels that right now. But I think if it's managed right, and if it's not overburdening the community, to have us pay for a lot of the bill, and from what I understand, there's going to be community support for this. As long as it's managed and it doesn't overburden the population of Pella, and it's thought of Pella first, and then whoever comes to town, then I think it's going to be a great asset to our community. It just has to be, you kind of have to think of it the back way. How are we going to do it and do it right? And like was spoke, we don't want to see this thing go south. I'm sure that you guys have a great plan for it, but I do also know that the sports park that we have right now is a great asset that I didn't realize it was going to be when it was originally brought up. But yeah, I'll see you all out there a lot. And if you can get more food out there, then thank you. Thanks.
Denise Gregory, President of the Union Street Players Theatrical Group. Union Street Players has been serving this community for over 35 years, and we have faithfully put on at least 4 productions each year for each of those 35 years. And I have been sitting in city council meetings for a long time, and each time I hear the community center and the stage presentations must be a priority for our community. The culture of this town is very important to us. So my question is, why are we not seeing plans tonight for what you plan to do about the community center and the stage and a new performing arts center? We need to see those figures so we can know what we support and who we want to vote for in the next election. And I feel like, once again, we've been put on the back burner for a recreational facility that has just come to the forefront as a new need to bring people into town. I feel like the culture of this town is important. I feel like the intellectual integrity of this town is at stake, and I'm really disappointed that we don't have those plans in front of us this evening. Thank you.
Just for clarification, we have had a couple informational meetings about the community center, the proposal from the Friends of the Community Center. And at our work session, council chose to also look at maybe a new performing arts center. And so that's in process. So no, it has not been forgotten or put on anybody's back burner. It's still something that we are working on.
But Don, you've never once asked us as an organization what we want, ever.
I think that there's been a lot of input on the community center in the 2 years that I've been involved in the city government.
But you've never sat down with us.
So I just want to clarify that we have had conversations about the community center and the arts, and the council's direction was to explore maybe another option to meet that need. So that's in process. Anyone else?
I need help from my neighbor, my 706 or 708 P Street.
You're 708.
A little levity to the situation here. So, John Bowman, so I'm, where's that, 708?
Peach.
I need to commit this to memory. Thank you. And so I'm here to represent Pella Corporation. I head up human resources for Pella, and I would indicate our very strong support for this indoor recreation center. It's important from our standpoint because it's a lot about attracting and retaining the talent we need that we're bringing in to this community. The simple fact of the matter is we are growing, and we're going to continue to execute this growth strategy that's going to require us to bring more and more, people into this wonderful community. And we think this is, again, very important from an Amending standpoint. We think it's important from the standpoint for competing with other neighboring communities where people could also choose to live, but we'd rather have them live here in Pella. So again, we strongly support it. Yes, we do believe that it will bring in tourism dollars, but that doesn't have to be the first priority. The first priority needs to be focused on the people here in this community. The Pella Corporation and the shareholders certainly have tried to put their support on a number of projects here in the community, and we will continue to do so. And again, it's all driven by our desire to execute our plans to continue to grow our company, which we think is for the benefit of certainly the Pella community, and I can't underscore enough the importance of being able to attract and retain the level of talent that we need in order to be successful. So I'd like to thank Mr. Mayor and City Council for the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
Thank you.
Tony Bachhoven, 1702 Neal Drive. I also agree that things like the recreation center are important to our community. But one of the things that's been very clear to me over the last 2 months in actually speaking to citizens that pay the taxes in this town is that places like the community center are vitally important to this community, as important as having indoor basketball courts and Olympic-sized swimming pools and all these other things that sound really great up front. But somebody has to pay for them. Somebody has to staff them. We as a community struggle to staff our own swimming pool that we have today. And so don't fool yourself in the prettiness of a new place and how easy it's going to be to get people to come and staff it. The other thing that's just blatantly obvious to me is that the community center isn't as important to some folks as it probably needs to be, or as it was 2 years ago when we all sat in the community center and unanimously went down the panel and said, we will do whatever we have to do to save the community center and rebuild it. The previous council often gets criticized by certain members of the current council and mayor that they just kicked the can down the road. They never made any decisions. And I've sat in here a couple times when the community center has been discussed, and a resounding amount of support for finishing that building has come forward, and the can just keeps getting kicked down the road. So I would come back to you and say it's time to stop kicking the can. Before you take on another monumental project like this, let's land on the one that's been going on for a couple of years, one that we all said before this community when we were running for these seats and said, we will do what we have to do to get it done, and get it done quick. 2 years has passed since that's happened, and nothing's been done. So I'm not saying we shouldn't have a new athletic facility like this. We maybe should. But we have projects that we've committed to this community that we would finish, that need to be finished first. Decisions need to be made on facilities that we've committed to redoing. So I would ask that you finally make a decision and do what we all said we would do 2 years ago when we sat in that room with the community center and committed to redoing the community center. And let's move forward. And then if a new facility is still in the picture, then let's move forward with that as a community and do it together. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to go through this, please. What's the cost estimate
On the facility,
Yes.
it's all going to be in the presentation we make after a while.
Okay.
in our discussion.
When they did that road out to past soccer complex, they gave us a cost, and it was doubled, right? When you all finished. So I'm going to assume that your cost estimate is going to be doubled on this other project.
Just a second. I want to make sure we're hearing truth, not speculation. Danny, what cost are you talking about and what was doubled?
The road to the development out there.
That's not correct. At one point, it was considered to be asphalt overlay and to maintain ditches, and then the whole criteria of the road changed to urban cross-section, 31 foot, to support truck traffic, storm sewers, sidewalks, the whole thing. So, yeah, it went from like 400 to 1.3, but it's an entirely different road. This is a road that's meant to last 50 to 100 years and not just 15.
But it went from 400 to 1.3.
Entirely different kind
What was
of
that? What percentage is that?
Well, basically 30% of the original, yeah,
Okay.
times.
The other thing is, the facility the size you're speaking of, how many citizens does it take to support that? I mean, customers coming in, is there a number for that too?
I'm not aware of a number, no.
You know, because you got staff, you got insurance, I don't know if you got taxes, whatever. There's a lot of overhead, right? So we need to know how many people are going to be coming in daily to at least break even, right?
Yeah, we'll figure that all out before any proposal is made, yes.
All right, thank you.
And it will all be very public, all the information that you're asking for will all
Okay.
be very public.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, tonight is not any kind of a proposal, it's just a discussion.
Okay, thanks.
Hello, my name is Michelle Jones, 1117 Sunset, and I wanted to voice just a little bit of concern on the amount of money that's being proposed. I have young kids, gym space is a problem, and so I'm not at all against a facility. However, looking at the plans, I think I saw with the big pool and the indoor water park and the splash pad, like, well, that sounds great. I'm concerned about other projects that might need to be addressed first. Number one, they already said the community center, but also even the soccer complex that's out there is not being taken care of well, in my opinion. There's like 1,000 people out there every Saturday. That's a rough estimate, but there's not enough parking. People are parking on the grass. So we just got an email, don't park on the grass, with a picture of a car on the grass, but there's nowhere to park. There's one stall for women, one stall for men, for the 1,000 people out there, and there is no drinking fountain, and there is no water bottle fill station. Way up at the ball fields there are, but by the time you walk up there and fill up your kid's water bottle and bring it back, you've missed half your game. So I just feel like there's things that need to be done with our already important assets that we already own, to maintain them, to improve them, make them work better for the people that are using them, and maybe we can scale back a little bit on the project so we can take care of what we already have, and then get some gyms too, sure. And then the last thing, just kind of more of a general statement, is I know that it's been mentioned to try to attract people, attract employees, so we can grow our businesses and grow Pella and everything like that. Number one, I think I've heard that in the last 10 years, Pella has grown by 142 citizens. Is that, I'm not really sure. But it hasn't like exploded. We're not a Waukee, we're not at Ankeny, and the reason we're not experiencing that growth, in my opinion, is because we live 40 miles from Des Moines. So no matter what we bring in for amenities, splash parks, whatever flashy things we can bring in, we're still 40 miles from Des Moines. So to me, the reason people aren't maybe moving here, that are in their 20s or whatever, isn't because we aren't Ankeny. People that do move here because we aren't Ankeny, because we're Pella. They're moving here for what we are, not for every bell and whistle you can get out there. So just my opinion as a business owner as well, who is struggling to find work. So workers, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All All right, we'll move on then. Can I get approval of a motion for approval of the consent agenda? Young? Hopkins, any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score. Yes. Strangerhorst. Yes. DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Theo.
Motion passed. Moving on, public hearings. Public hearing on the proposal to enter into a First Amendment to the agreement for private development with Vermeer Corporation. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item, and I'd like to direct the council's attention to the big board for a presentation on this item. For those listening online or following from home, I'm on slide number 2. As Mayor Ward stated, tonight's public hearing is about an amendment to our 2019 agreement with Vermeer Corporation. As the council is well aware, we did approve a prior development agreement with Vermeer Corporation for the campus rebuild, and a little bit of background on this. In 2018, unfortunately, we did have a tornado that struck the Vermeer campus. It eliminated about 40% of the manufacturing space on the campus. Thankfully, a couple comments from that. Thankfully, no one was in. The injuries were minimal. There was no death or fatalities, and that was remarkable and attributed to the Vermeer staff as well as our public safety responders as well. Second of all, when you look at losing 40% of the manufacturing space on the campus, thankfully Vermeer chose to rebuild in Pella and retain the jobs within Pella. We're very, very thankful for that. The original rebuild project that we had actually added additional manufacturing space on the campus, and it's remarkable that it has been completed on this. The reason why we're proposing an amendment for tonight's facility, for the parts distribution facility, is this facility was actually planned pre-tornado of 2018, and it would have been built prior to 2018. The tornado happened, and Vermeer experienced a tremendous campus rebuild. So this was the next project in line. Now, the building that we're talking about tonight, we also want to make very clear from the state's perspective, it's a significant investment in the state of Iowa. It's a significant investment in the local economy as well. And as a result, it has qualified through the state of Iowa for a high-quality jobs program on that. And specifically what Vermeer Corporation is proposing, and we do have a color elevation of the proposed parts distribution center. It's a 310,000 square foot parts distribution facility. The estimated construction cost of the building alone is in excess of $23 million. And the number of new jobs that are being proposed through the state of Iowa agreement is at least 75 new positions for this. And as we stated, through the state of Iowa actually qualified for the high quality jobs program. What this amendment does tonight is simply allows the city to meet the required local match for the state of Iowa on this, through this, and that's why we're proposing the amendment to our 2019 agreement, because this building was originally supposed to be constructed as Vermeer's plans, but was simply delayed. So from city staff standpoint, we consider it part of the campus rebuild project, and that's what's being proposed tonight through the amendment that we are considering. So Mandy, let's go ahead, please. And as council is aware, when we approved our agreement in 2019 to allow for the campus rebuild portion of the project, the theory was quite simple. When you look at the project at 2019 and shortly after the tornado, the rebuild project was enormous. And what we looked at in making the investment in our community and what was considered on it to assist Vermeer Corporation, what we stated is the tornado never would have happened on the campus rebuild. What we thought of at the time, and I think it was a very equitable solution, is if you look at it, is if the tornado never would have happened, what would Vermeer Corporation's assessed values be over the next 10 years? And what we came up with is we established in 2018 with the original agreement a baseline valuation that increased 3% annually all the way up through 2029, so it was over a 10-year period of time. And what the thought was with campus rebuild, since it would be in excess of their original assessment on it, anything above the baseline value, the taxes on that would be abated on it. And that was the original agreement for the campus rebuild. What we're proposing tonight is to simply have an add parts distribution facility onto the original agreement, and that's what's being proposed. And so the property taxes on the new parts distribution facility would be abated through the year 2029. And again, from city staff standpoint, we consider this part of the campus rebuild. But what we have up here is just a snapshot in time. What is the latest assessment for the current year is January 1st, 2020. how the Vermeer agreement works right now is anything that's over a baseline value that's been increased up to just shy of $19.4 million, that amount has been incrementally abated. So they're still paying taxes on what they would have paid had the tornado not occurred in 2018, but the incremental value or the replacement value of the replacement facilities, those taxes are being abated through the year 2029. When 2029 comes on board, that's when everything goes back on the tax roll, including the replacement value. But once again, this was part of the city's incentive package and assistance package to maintain that the campus was rebuilt here in Pella, as well as the jobs are retained here in Pella as well. So, Mr. Mayor, we are, from city staff standpoint, we are recommending approval of the amendment, which simply places the parks distribution facility in with the original campus rebuild, and that's ultimately what their proposal is tonight. And with that, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Mandy, any written comments?
No written comments.
Comments, council? Questions?
Another question I had, the original agreement with the state, that doesn't have to be changed, does it?
The states, through both of our development agreements, actually with Vermeer Corporation, there's clauses in both our original development agreement as well as this amendment that requires Vermeer to be in compliance with both agreements. Vermeer has two separate agreements with the state of Iowa for the projects on it, so this one is an additional agreement they have with the state of Iowa. It's also a condition with this amendment as well. So they're joined at the hip. Both the city and the state are, the agreements are intertwined. The state's conditions are also the same conditions that we have.
And they've already accepted this as an appropriate local match.
Yes, yes they have.
The state?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
Anything else, council? Any member of the public had any comment on this proposal? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Master Hopkins, discussion. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanstra.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Abstain.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Seabout.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, so we move on to the resolution number 6347, entitled Resolution Approving and Authorizing Execution of a First Amendment to the Agreement for Private Development by and between the City of Pella and Vermeer Corporation. Can I get a motion for approval?
Support.
Skibout, Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Seabout.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Abstain.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Vanstra.
Yes.
Motion passed. All right, moving on, public hearing regarding an application to conditionally rezone 2.47 acres of land along Moss Lyman Drive from A1 agriculture to R3 multiple family residential. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and once again, I'd like to refer council's attention to the big board. As Mayor DeWard stated, tonight's public hearing is on a conditional rezoning, and this particular request has been submitted by Rave Property Management. It's approximately for a 2.47 acre parcel that is just south of Moss Lyman Drive, and specifically what's being proposed tonight is a rezoning change from A1 agriculture to R3 multifamily residential. But I would also qualify that R3 is a conditional rezoning, and we'll get into the details here very shortly on it, but just keep in mind that it is conditional tonight. Now, as far as the location of the property, Moss Lyman Drive is located right here. The parcel that we're talking about is this yellow highlighted parcel right over here. The former Holiday Inn Express, now the Grand State Hotel, is located right over here. So we do have pictures of the site as well up on the big board. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, as we stated up here, what you see up here is the current zoning map that we have for the city. Property is currently zoned A1 agricultural. We do have a description of what is currently allowable in the A1 district as well. But as you can see, when we talk about R3, and keep in mind again tonight is conditional R3 zoning, there is R3 zoning that is nearby this potential rezoning request as well. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the R3, it is very important to understand what's being requested tonight. Under the city zoning code, R3 stands for multifamily residential. What this allows for is high-density residential property to be constructed, and technically when we talk about, just to get the terms down with it, when we use terms loosely on this, R3 allows for roughly 21 units per acre of housing to be constructed. So it's the city's highest density levels as far as housing is concerned. And we do have a description up here, but again, it's intended primarily for multifamily residential. As we stated earlier, this is a conditional rezoning request, which means the property owner has proposed an elimination of uses that would have otherwise be allowed if it did not have the conditions. And so really when you look at the conditionals, what we have up here on the big board are the uses that have been eliminated from this as well. And when you look at what is left standing on this, is basically what we have is single-family residential, those two-family residential duplexes, and single-family attached, I believe. We've also, along with this rezoning request, we also have screening requirements as well, and there's also enhanced design standards for the buildings to be constructed. All of this is what we have with this rezoning request. The end goal is looking at the rezoning request tonight. What we're trying to do is we're lowering the density levels on the property from the 21 units here to a much lower level that we have here on this. And so we believe by the time you look at what's actually allowed to be built, factor in the building setbacks, that this rezoning is probably closer to a medium to low density residential rezoning. So please keep that in mind. Again, that with the proposals, what we have here, both from a use standpoint as well as a density standpoint, it's all intended to gear towards land use compatibility issues. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the comprehensive plan is concerned and the future use land map, it's important to understand when we talk about compliance or conformance, rather, with the city's comprehensive plan, we're talking about the entire document on there. And from that standpoint, the reason why I'm mentioning this when we talk about compliance or conformance with the city's comprehensive plan, if you were to look in the strategic goals for the city's comprehensive plan, one of the key items for the city, and has traditionally and still is a need, is additional housing in our community. We've had a housing shortage in the community for a number of years. There's a whole section of strategic priorities that talks about the need for additional housing, as well as strategies for the city to encourage additional housing for the city as well. So when you look at the goals and strategic objectives of the comprehensive plan, we believe this proposal to provide additional housing for the community meets a key strategic objective of the city's comprehensive plan and is in accordance with the comprehensive plan. The future use land map, again, is the future use land map. It's based to be a general land map on this as well. If you look at the land map as well, it identifies this general area to be somewhat low density residential. Keep in mind, when you look at the restrictions that we have, we believe from a density standpoint, the property would be classified as almost in between a low density to medium density residential. And the reason why I'm explaining this is if you look at the land use compatibility matrix here in the city's comprehensive plan, we believe the proposed R3 with the density levels up here basically means it's compatible with the existing area that we have around Lost Land, or the proposed site rather. So the takeaway when we look at the comprehensive plan and our position on the comprehensive plan is we believe it meets a key strategic objective of the city. It provides additional housing for the community, which is needed for the community. We also believe the proposed use type is compatible with the existing neighborhood as well. And then we also believe that the proposed design standards would allow the buildings to fit in with the existing neighborhood as well. So Mandy, let's go ahead, please, and we'll summarize this. Yeah, right up here again, we have the proposed land use map up here, the city's comprehensive plan. Again, this is a guide that we have as far as the land use map here. And when you look at this, again, the key takeaway is this is a conditional rezoning on it. And once again, it would be probably classified with what could actually be built as somewhere between low to medium density residential, which we believe is compatible with the low density residential that is adjacent to the property as well. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, overall, Mr. Mayor, we believe, and when we say we mean city administration and planning and zoning, we believe the proposed rezoning aligns with key aspects of the city's comprehensive plan. We also believe it is in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan and it meets a key strategic goal of the city's comprehensive plan. In addition, we also believe that the conditions associated with this rezoning request address any potential land use compatibility issues that may exist as far as the proposed development with this site. And as a result, we are recommending approval of the ordinance as written this evening. It is important to note that the Planning and Zoning Commission did discuss this request at their September 27th meeting and did unanimously approve the request that we are considering this evening. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes staff's presentation. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor or council may have on this item.
Thanks, Mike. Mandy, any written comments?
No written comments.
Any oral comments, council?
I have just a couple questions. Is this the property that we're looking at that you own, Dave, and you own it with Don's brother?
Yeah.
Is that, okay. I just want to, under full disclosure, I think that's important. No. And then these designs of these residential units, is that something that's going to be run past the council? Are we going to get to see what is going to be built there prior, at any point?
I'm not sure, actually. That's part of the.
Yeah, I believe the intention, and Jerry Bidos, the intention was that it be administratively is similar to what we've done with other rezoning requests that have been conditional.
But I mean, prior to the actual units being built, is that going to be approved by anyone?
It would be approved through the Planning and Zoning Office, and these particular items that would be before the building permits would be issued. We'd have to design the elevations that we would see and make sure that they're in conformance with the ordinance restrictions.
Right. I guess I just want to be sure that we've always, with past councils, when there are things of this magnitude, the designs on the part of the builders have always been run past council. So we kind of give it a final look to make sure that the integrity piece is there, that it works with the rest of the neighborhood. And so I want to be sure that we don't skip that step, that perhaps council is given a glimpse of what would be built out there.
Yeah, as far as the design standards, Jerry, I know that you explained to the Planning and Zoning Commission where the design standards came from, and if you may help me out on that as well.
Certainly, the design standards that attach to the ordinance are directly from the Boss Plan and CCNRs. So the requirement is that these homes will blend in and look exactly like what you see surrounding this project location. So they have the exact same design standards that all the other homes in Boss Plan have. So they will mirror image, or the same fronts will look exactly the same. So
They have to follow the Boss covenant, Jerry?
Yes.
Okay. Is the intent duplexes and single-family homes? Yeah, okay. And is there any park involved in there? I didn't, park is included. Have you, not that it's surrounded by a 140-acre park, I understand. I didn't know if you had plans for any, And then I also see miscellaneous uses. Solar energy system, is that just, is that something, a larger system, or is that allowing rooftop solar units?
It's allowing rooftop solar units for those units for the owners if they so choose to put one.
Okay, and is there any plans on that?
No, I don't have any plans other than lots and rezoning at this point.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I got one. Is this for sale, or is this, will it be a rentable duplex?
Haven't decided yet.
Okay. All right.
Like I said, I don't have designs. All I'm doing at this point is just rezoning into R3. I just did planned improvements and getting them rezoned.
Very good. Thank you.
I wondered what all that dirt work was about.
Anything else, council? Any public comments?
Is there another area in town that's R3 that you're doing compared to?
Go back to the two maps that are over two screens ago.
Yeah, that's probably it. Down here in Lost London, there's quite a few R3 zoned areas already in Lost London Drive.
There's this whole series of duplexes there where that R3 is, there along that street, yeah. And then there's the other up to the right, that R3, that's where those condominiums are off to your right, the gray ones. So there's a lot of R3 out there already, yeah.
Are those, what is that? I've often wondered that. There's R3 to the south of Boss Landon. There it starts R3. There looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 lots there. Those are R3 too, aren't they?
Excuse me, the south of Boss Landon?
The south of Boss Landon
Yes.
there, that's R3 all the way to the corner, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's 4 single-family homes.
Oh,
there.
is that?
And then there's duplexes.
So, but that's
Have
still
been-
rated R3, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that's not, R3 allows all
Right,
housing
right.
types. It's primarily intended for multifamily on it. You could build a single-family home in an R3 district.
Right.
So,
But it's zone R3 all the way to the opening to, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's almost all filled in now too, down to the pond anyway. Yeah, any other questions, comments from anyone? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
Branderhorst Banstrom. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Branderhorst.
Yes.
Stanstruck.
Yes.
Skiba.
Yes.
Hawkins. Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to ordinance number 999, entitled an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Pella, Iowa by conditionally amending the boundaries of the R3 district to include property generally located south of Boss Landon Drive at Utrecht Lawn, and directing the planning and zoning director to note the ordinance number and date of this change on the official zoning map. And this is the first reading. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Mr. Spore, any discussion?
The only thing I would say is I wish that we had vetted the owners a bit harder. Payback. It's payback.
His dirt work got done before yours.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Stanstruck.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Branderhorst.
Yes.
Skiba.
Yes.
Hawkins.
Motion passed. Okay, moving on to petitions and communications. Special event permit request for pop-up live music events. Mike?
I guess, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. For those following at home, I'm on slide number 10 tonight. As Mayor DeWard stated, tonight's special event permit request comes to us tonight from the Pace Alliance, and specifically what they're proposing is to have pop-up live music events on the patio of the Brew Coffee House. Now, the proposed events are listed up here on the big board from Saturday, October 9th to Friday, December 3rd. It's important to note that as part of this request, we do have a resolution that would close 7 parking spaces on the north side of the 600 block of Franklin Street to allow extra seating. We do have the parking spaces shown up here in the red highlighted up here area as well up here on the big board. Now, Mr. Mayor, it is important to note that all city departments have reviewed this application. The insurance certificate have been received, and city staff is recommending approval this evening. And with that, that concludes the staff presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
All right, thanks, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved. Oops.
Branderhorst Skiba, discussion?
I love this. I like it. It's awesome.
Good.
No, I love this. It's just what we were talking about earlier. Culture, civility, thank you.
And that's what,
Thank you.
I mean, and that's what the whole, I actually counted it. It's actually not gonna be 7 spots. It's more gonna be like 5, 4. But that's this whole thing is, came up with this and it's called, I call it Backstage Pass, and it's kind of pop-up music. And where the downtown businesses are staying open now later the first Fridays of each month. And we want to support them. So I'm like, well, how simple? And so this is just on the brew patio, and it's nothing but live music. And we've tapped into Central College. They have a wonderful music program. We've tapped into them, and we're giving some of their people just some gigs.
Yeah.
And so then the intention is this is what we have, but to do that around town, just to kind of create that pop-up art culture.
Mary, thank you. I
Thank you.
love your creativity. You know, the things that you're moving forward shows all of us that you really do have the best interest of our community at heart.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I do.
Yes, I know you do, and it's sincere.
Okay, anything else? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Eno.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Bandstra.
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 6348, entitled Resolution Temporary Closing Public Ways or Grounds of Connection. Say we didn't already do that. Okay, let me start over. Resolution number 6348, entitled Resolution Temporary Closing Public Ways or Grounds of Connection with a Special Event known as Pop-Up Live Music Events. I doubt you have anything to add, Mike?
You're correct, Mr. Mayor.
Can I have a motion for approval?
Support.
DeYoung, Hopkins, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Bandstra.
Yes.
Eno.
Yes.
Motion passed. Special event permit request for Wander Spellin Ribbon Cutting. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, once again, I'd like to direct the council's attention to the big board. Tonight's request comes to us from the Kiwanis Club. Specifically, they requested a special event permit, a ribbon to celebrate the grand opening of the Wander Spellin all-inclusive playground that is proposed, or that is being constructed, rather, at Kiwanis Park. It is important to note that the event is scheduled from 10 a.m. to noon on October 16th. And we do have a description of all the events that are scheduled to take place during the grand opening ceremony as well. It is important to note that all Perkins City departments have reviewed this application, and we are recommending approval this evening, Mr. Mayor. And I would just also like to say this project has been fantastic, and we're very fortunate to have this in our community. I'd like to thank the Kiwanis Club for their generous donation to the City of Pella, because this was one of the quality of life projects that I think is going to be special to our community in future years, and we have a proud partnership with the Wander Spellin Club. So once again, the event is a grand opening ceremony on Saturday, October 16th from 10 a.m. to noon. And as far as city procedures, we have everything we need, and we are recommending approval this evening. So we're more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
All right, thanks, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved. Support.
Bandstra, DeYoung, discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Bandstra.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Eno.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 6349, entitled "A Resolution Approving and Authorizing an Amendment to Loan and Disbursement Agreement by and between the City Council of the City of Pella, Iowa, and the Iowa Finance Authority, and authorizing and providing for the reissuance of the Sewer Revenue Capital Loan Note Series 2011 rate reset of the city." Mike?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As Mayor DeWard stated, what we're talking about this evening is an amendment to our loan agreement with the Iowa Finance Authority. And this deals with a 2011 amendment, or rather a mandate by the Iowa Department of Natural Resources to eliminate all loan bypasses in the community, I believe. And as a result of that mandate, we did make some significant improvements to our wastewater collection system on this. What we're doing this evening is actually authorizing a rate reduction on the interest rate for those capital loan notes. And specifically what's being proposed is going from the current rate of 3% to 1.75% over the remaining life of the loan term. Currently, the city has just over $3 million of sewer revenue notes outstanding for the project. If council were to approve this interest rate reduction, we should save nearly $245,000 through the remaining 10 years of the loan. So, Mr. Mayor, I think it goes without saying we are recommending approval this evening, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
All right, thanks, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval? Skibout, Hopkins, any discussion?
I don't think these folks are real bankers.
Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please.
Eno.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score. Yes. DeYoung.
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Bandstra.
Yes.
$244,000. Resolution number 6350, entitled Resolution Approving Amendment Number 1 for Engineering Services with Beanster and Kim, Inc. for the East Interchange Infrastructure Improvements. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item, and for those in attendance, I'd like to refer your attention to the big board. As Mayor DeWard stated, what we are proposing this evening is amendment number 1 to our engineering agreement that we have with Beanster and Kim Engineering, the engineering firm of Beanster and Kim. And overall, this agreement is for the East Interchange Infrastructure Improvements Project, and we do have a map of the area and the public improvements associated with it. It's important to keep in mind that these infrastructure improvements were necessary to support the Lely North American Headquarters project that is currently located just southwest of exit 44 of Highway 163 on this as well. And specifically when we talk about public infrastructure, what we did was we extended the city's water distribution system to the site. We also constructed a new sanitary sewer lift station along with the gravity sewer main. In addition, we also made improvements to the County Line Road that's south of Highway 163. Now, when Beanster and Kim originally proposed this project to assist us and actually design these public improvements for the city, they anticipated that all these improvements would be going on at the same time, and that has not occurred with the construction project. And some of it's good news and bad news. One of the items that we had, for instance, on 250th Avenue, is we decided to apply for a RISE grant to assist us with the construction cost of making improvements to 250th Avenue. We were awarded the RISE grant. That took additional work for the engineering side of things, and also caused a delay in the project as well. Since we are spreading the time period of the project over multiple construction seasons, Beanster and Kim has asked for and requested an amendment to their engineering services agreement. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as we stated, when we look at the Lely North American campus, it is important to note that overall, this is approximately a 65-acre project here in Lely. Thankfully, has made a decision to invest in our community and locate their new facility here in Pella. It's roughly about a $16 to $20 million project. And the great news is, when we talk about these infrastructure improvements, we were to go to the city's comprehensive plan. One of the key needs of the city at the time was zoning areas for heavy industrial zoning. And they actually identified in the comprehensive plan this area right here. So it aligns with the city's comprehensive plan. The good news is on Lely's campus, when you look at the 65 acres, roughly about 15 to 20 acres is going to be needed for the North American Headquarters project. We anticipate there's going to be additional capacity for additional firms to locate here, which is needed in the community as well. So overall, when we look at the cost of the public improvements extended down here, it's roughly about $2.2 million, included the water distribution system as well as the lift station, as well as a force main that connected back along the right-of-way of Old Highway 163 to connect to the city's gravity sanitary sewer main system. But overall, in addition, we also improved 250th Avenue as well. Now, as far as Beanster's proposed amendment, they started off with the original contract just shy of $191,000 for engineering design services as well as construction observation services. Tonight's amendment is for $37,000 if approved by the City Council. It would be just shy of $228,000 of engineering design services or engineering services for the project. It is important to note that the original construction contracts that we have for all these projects is right around $1,678,000. We've reviewed this agreement and the proposed amendment, and in essence, we find the fees reasonable, and we also feel the justification for making this request is reasonable as well, considering the timing of these public improvements. And with that, Mr. Mayor, we are recommending approval of amendment number 1 to our agreement with Beanster and Kim for additional engineering fees associated with these interchange improvements. And with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions the Mayor and Council may have on this item.
All right, thanks, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
Support.
Keep out DeYoung. Discussion.
Denny, refresh my memory. Is that going to be a rural cross-sectional or?
Full cross-section with ditches, yeah.
With ditches?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what RISE and the DOT money would support.
Right.
And of course, we also had both counties involved in the review, and so we had to get everybody on board with the same design. It is 8 inches thick with basket, so we can add 3-foot curb and gutter someday, and then it's a 31, and we have storm sewer and all on.
That's good.
And we're doing the same thing north of Riviera Road too. It's been on those little segments they put in, and in the next 6 months here we'll be coming with that design too. It'll be similar, the same.
Thank you.
Design.
Anything Anything else? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Skiba.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to ordinances. Ordinance number 1000, entitled an ordinance amending the city code of the City of Pella, Iowa, Chapter 63.04, special speed restrictions. First reading. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item this evening, and specifically this ordinance that we are considering this evening. Okay. Actually, I believe we have a combined presentation on it. Luckily, we're considering two ordinances, but thankfully, there's only one presentation for it. So with this, it is important to note that we actually discussed this at our last City Council meeting during policy signing on September 21st. Council instructed staff to proceed with the formal consideration of the ordinances, which we are doing this evening. And specifically what tonight's presentation is once again, there are two ordinances. They relate to speed limits and stop signs on Neal Drive and 218th Avenue. As council is aware, this general area, when we talk about Neal Drive and 218th Avenue, we are basically taking a gravel road and hard surface road and making it into an urban cross-section street. And when we talk urban cross-section, what that means is just a traditional, what people envision a normal city street on it as well. Now, we have a description of what's entailed with this project this evening, or that's currently being constructed out there as well. And just to orientate everyone, a few housekeeping items. The soccer complex is located right over here. The Shady Brook subdivision is located right over here. The main entrance to the Shady Brook subdivision. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as ordinance number 1 that we're going to be considering this evening, what this does is sets the speed limit on 218th Avenue from Neal Drive south of the city limits. So it would be this section of road right here to be 30 miles per hour. Now, when we look at this, we do have some of the reasons that we did discuss on September 21st on this as well. As far as the speed limits, we are recommending approval of the speed limit change. And again, as much of the reasons that we talked about on September 21st. Andy, let's go ahead, please. Ordinance 101, it basically takes and it adds, actually here it adds 2 stop signs that are located here on the slide. And we do have them in the red highlighted areas located right here. And again, much the same justification that we have in the reasons we talked for the stop signs at this particular intersection is the same reasons we are proceeding with it tonight. And again, as far as the justification for both the speed limit as well as the stop signs, again, it's the same reasons and the same issues and the same justifications that we talked about on September 21st. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes our presentation this evening. I'm more than happy to answer any questions the Mayor and Council may have on this item.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval? Skiba, Hopkins, discussion?
Denny, when's that opening up?
We hope sometime next week.
So
We
we-
still need 4 sidewalks along 218
Okay.
and seating. And they made a pretty good run at backfilling curbs today. I think another day or so of that. Get some work on the intake.
So it'd be prudent if we set aside second, third, and pushed it through?
Yes, so Paul can write tickets. We'll put
Yeah.
the stop signs up. It's a revenue source.
I don't want to fund this entire.
Single-handed.
You got multiple vehicles to do.
Question, did we decide on parking?
We did, by code, we can go sign it, no parking. I forget which side, all the number, but we'll look at it a little closer to coordinate with where the sidewalks are, where the driveways are.
Gotcha.
But by code, without further discussion, we put no parking on the side.
Okay.
If it becomes a problem, we may want to consider no parking on both sides.
Okay.
For the most part, nobody's used to parking out there. I don't know, maybe something told me on Neal Drive it happened on that little section. In fact, I think we'll just see how it works out. Some guys don't feel it's right.
Okay, anything else? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Skiba.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Motion passed.
I move, Mayor, that we set aside the second, third reading, place on the final reading.
Support.
Okay, motion made, supported to set aside second, third reading. Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Skibout.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Motion carried. I need a motion to adopt the ordinance. I think Bruce did.
I'll
Skibout.
support it.
Branderhorst, any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Skibout. Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to ordinance number 1001, entitled an ordinance amending the city code of the City of Pella, Iowa, Chapter 65.01, stop intersections, first reading. Can I get a motion for approval? Support. DeYoung, Hopkins, discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Skibout.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Move to set aside the rules in place of final reading.
Support.
Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded to set aside second, third reading. Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Skibout.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes. Move to
Motion
adopt.
passed. Okay, there's a motion for approval or to adopt the ordinance. Did I get Brad Horst? Did I get support? DeYoung? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Skibout.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, abstract of bills number 2088. Can I get a motion for approval?
Move to approve the issue orders.
Support.
Skibout, Branderhorst, any discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Skibout.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, council, any council have any other business you'd like to bring up tonight?
I have one thing. I've had a lot of people with a lot of confusion about the parking lot over here, that the signs are quite small, and when individuals who work on the Mullengrad are parking their cars, they're being politely told that they can't park there. But I even made a mental note of looking at them tonight, and they are rather small. So is there a way we can be a little more distinctive about where people can and cannot park? Because we've taken quite a chunk of that open parking away. So there's a lot of confusion.
Are you talking about the parking lot that's
Yes.
immediately butts this
Yes.
building that's being used by the police department for spaces?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll follow up with the police department on the signs identifying the
That'd be
required
great.
spaces for the PD. So.
Super, thank you.
I just had a quick compliment to our park staff. If you go through Central Park, I know I always think of tulips there, but the plantings there this fall are absolutely beautiful. So if you get a chance before the frost, I would get a walk through there because they are very noteworthy.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, any member of the public have any other business you'd like to address the council with? If you do, please come forward, state your name, address, try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. All right, then we will adjourn to our policy and planning to discuss indoor rec center and police department security surveillance and access control system. Does anybody need a break before we go there? I'm getting an indication, yes.
Yes.
We'll take a couple minutes. Let's begin our discussion. Mary?
Huh?
We're trying to get started here.
Chatting everyone up.
Not surprising.
Do a whistle, do a whistle.
All right, we'll get started. Mike?
All right. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and direct the council's attention to the big board for presentation on what we have tonight as far as a proposed indoor recreation center. For those following at home, I'm on slide number 18 this evening. Now, before we talk about the proposed indoor recreation center, I thought it would be helpful if we just talked about where the city is when you look at, I would call, quality of life investments in our community, and also talk a little bit not only about where we're at the stage that we're in, but also the process that we intend to follow as we make decisions towards both not only the indoor recreation center, but also on the existing community center as well. Now, the best way to describe things right now when we look at our phases is we view this as a three-phase project or a three-phase decision-making process. Right now, if you were to ask city staff where we're at, we believe we're in the conceptual phase of the project, really for both projects. And what the intention of the conceptual phase is to talk about ideas, identify needs in the community, service level needs, and make sure that we, what I like to refer to our staff is kind of round up all the cattle. We consider all the options that we want to consider in making decisions on both not only the indoor recreation center, but as well as the community center as well. Now, when we talked, as Mayor DeWard stated earlier this evening, we spent quite a bit of time on the existing community center. And specifically, when we look at the existing community center, we've looked at options as far as just renovating the existing community center to extend the life of the community center and fix what actually needs to be fixed in the community center to accommodate existing service level needs. We believe that option is right around $4.5 million option. And we even looked up to a potential partnership with the Friends of the Community Center that would, in essence, totally renovate the entire community center, plus put on a wing addition to the facility as well. That option was roughly just shy of about a $15 million project. The Friends had stated that they felt that they could raise approximately $4 million for that option. So once again, we're still in the conceptual phase. During those discussions on the community center, the council and I thought it was a very good point and to ask the question about they'd like to see a comparison of what the cost of renovating the community center would be versus building a new community center, performing arts center. As Mayor DeWard stated, we're currently in the process of conducting that analysis. We've contracted with SEH that actually put together the city's long-term facility plan. They are in the process of looking at that very option, and we anticipate that we're going to have results to be able to disclose to council within the next 45 days. So there's going to be more to come on the community center. Now, as far as tonight's discussion, what we have, and we will be talking about the indoor recreation center, but please keep in mind, as we talked about the indoor recreation center, it is again is a conceptual presentation tonight. We want to make sure that we get ideas, thoughts out there, and it's an initial discussion on the proposed indoor recreation center. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, as far as our decision-making process, there's been quite a bit of talk about questions as far as the fiscal analysis, and I can tell you safely at the City of Pella, and I've been with the City of Pella for almost 20 years now, every single project that we have, this is a very serious item that we take into consideration. And when we talk about fiscal capacity analysis and where we're at, please keep in mind in these three phases, they're somewhat interchangeable, and work has already been done on certain aspects of this. But one of the things when we talk about the fiscal capacity discussion, what we wanted to look at is an overview of the city's funding needs. And when we talk about investments, these are two very, I think, important investments for the community. An interest in both projects has been clearly stated by the public. But when we talk about fiscal capacity, we want to talk about the city's fiscal capacity and our ability to support those projects. And specifically, when we talk about fiscal capacity discussions, we don't want to be looking just with blinders on at quality of life investments. We want to make sure we view everything that we do. Specifically, what we're going to be talking about during that phase of the project, or this portion of the project, is we're going to be looking at funding needs that the city has for infrastructure needs. And so the intention is when we make decisions on facility investments, quality of life projects that are very significant to the community, we also want to make sure that we make the decisions on with a clear understanding of what the city's other funding needs are. And we talk about the amount of revenue sources that we could actually contribute to both of those projects. So there's going to be significantly more discussion on fiscal capacity coming down the road on both projects as we enter this phase. It is important to note that when we talk about both projects, we're also going to be looking at potential revenue sources to support the facility investments that we're proposing on that. There'll be a general discussion on those. And not just in general, there'll be a significant discussion on the revenue sources. In addition, we're also going to talk about potential partnerships to support the facility investments. So when we look at these quality of life projects, Key thing to keep in mind is that the city is proposing private-public partnerships with these. We're going to need partners to build these significant investments in our community. And so that will be also discussed in detail during these meetings. And then finally, we want to make sure that if we have any discussions on quality of life investments, that we do talk about what the expectation for the city's tax rate or rate increases is to support these projects. Now, I want to stress for members in the public before as we talk about this, we're setting the expectations. And again, right now we're in the conceptual phase. After the conceptual phase is done, once we identify the options we want to consider, we're going to move to the fiscal phase. The fiscal phase, as we talk about expectations, is what is the acceptable tax rate for the facilities? Tax rate, if any. It's critical to know that as you make decisions on the project, because if we're looking at available resources and talking about tax rates and maintaining tax rates, that's going to be key to size and scale options for both of these projects. So again, I would like to state for the record, this portion of the project or decision portion of the project decision phase is yet to come, and there will be a significant discussion on city fiscal capacity. Once we've identified the city's fiscal capacity and the parameters that we have to operate in, then it makes logical sense to move to phase 3. So Mandy, let's go ahead. Phase 3 is what I would deem the prioritization of improvements on it as well. During this phase, we'll be looking, once we've established the city's fiscal capacity on that, the parameters of the city council have established, we're going to make determinations on the size and scale of the facilities. We're also going to look at the prioritization of proposed facility investments. In addition, there'll be a timeline for post-facility investments on it as well. That's the last stage in the project. And so from our standpoint, when we look at it, I would stress that we've done quite a bit of work to date on these phases, but there's significantly more discussion at the council level that would need to take place. And specifically on this, and I would also like to stress, there's going to be a lot of discussion on city finances as well, and that's yet to come. So again, the reason why I'm going through this as far as the questions tonight, we are in the conceptual phase. This is a conceptual proposal tonight that we're talking about. It's meant to identify items that we've heard from city staff level as needs in the community. And I would think also when we talk about the indoor recreation center, we're talking a lot, we spend a lot of time talking about how we grow our community, how we can grow our community. A lot of the concepts that we're talking about tonight are specifically identified as far as growing the community. So please keep that in mind. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, as far as the overall timeline, I didn't have it up on the big board, but I know that seemed like 3 distinct phases, and just so everyone has a general time frame, we've established the spring of 2022 as probably the date that we would like to have the plan done on here. So that would be all 3 phases. That's conceptual, fiscal capacity, and the final decision on the facilities would be the spring of next year is the timeline that we're operating in the city administration. Obviously, I would state that's just our timeline. That's what we've tentatively assigned. The mayor and council are in charge of that timeline. That could either be accelerated or it can be extended. That's completely up to the mayor and council. So that somewhat depends on the information that you folks need to make an informed decision. So keep that in mind that that's just a tentative date that we've set out in the calendar. And again, the ultimate decision is up to the mayor and council. So before we go on with the discussion on the indoor recreation center, does anyone have any questions on A, where we're at in the project, and B, our plan to address and actually be able to make decisions on both the community center and the indoor recreation center, or the process that we're going to undertake?
So your proposal is to have a tentative referendum it would have to be March, because referendums can only be in November and March.
Yeah. Just to clarify, I think that's a great question. It's clarification. What we're saying is, Mandy, if we can go back one slide, please. We look at our phases that we've identified here: conceptual, fiscal capacity, prioritization. We're talking about our own plans being finalized by the city council.
Okay.
Items such as referendums, if that's called for on it, that's a separate issue, and we anticipate that's going to be a part of the prioritization of improvements in the timeline of the project. What we're saying is on the decision-making, our end, what we can control is spring. And that could either be accelerated or extended at the decision of the mayor and council.
So do you foresee that if this would go to a referendum, it would be a referendum need is there.
Yeah, what I would say is it's dangerous for me to make statements. I would say if the mayor and council approve the plans and if the projects do call for some sort of referendum or revenue sources, it's likely that could occur in 2022, but that's to be determined, and that's really up to the
Okay.
mayor and council.
Thank you for the clarity, Mike.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the rec center then. And what we have here is some color elevations that we had. We thought it was important as we talked about the indoor recreation center that we do have some examples so people will have an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about a community indoor recreation center. I will state tonight that they seem to be somewhat popular by communities or desirable by communities as well. There's been a few that's been built in Iowa for it. Overall, when we talk about the community or indoor recreation center, what we're really talking about is an area that's identified to address the city's indoor recreation needs. Communities also use them as a means to help grow their communities and attract new residents to their communities, and that's been part of our strategies and things that's been a key focus of the Pella City Council. So again, what we have up here is color elevations. These were prepared by Kramer and Associates. As you can see, what we have would be the front entrance to the Pella Recreation Center that we have. Proposed rock climbing wall would be located right here, as well as gymnasium space that we have. We'll get into the details on this here very shortly when we talk about the floor plan or proposed floor plan for the indoor recreation center. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, as background on these, when you take a look at the indoor recreation center, and I can talk safely from city administration's side of things that we often hear that needs from residents in the community is recreational activities during the winter months in Iowa. And specifically, some of the items that come up, and a good example of this is when we were looking at the community center and we hired SEH to identify needs. One of the items that came up as far as the service level was gymnasium space. There was a tremendous need for gym space, and that was a clearly identified need in the focus group meetings that we did with SEH for the community center. We've also heard the common thought is what is things to do in Iowa, and not just Pella, but in Iowa during the winter months on this as well. And what's been common is items that would have indoor recreation, such as basketball courts, here pickleball courts that we would have here. What you see up here is actually a facility that was from Lenexa, Kansas, that we have color elevations. And again, this is just to give concept of some of the items that we're talking about. But as you can see right here, we have an indoor walking track that would be proposed as well. And then in addition, the proposal or the initial concept that we have tonight would also include a competition swimming pool as well as a recreation swimming pool as well. And again, what's geared towards is recreational activities out of the community, specifically geared towards the winter months, which is a critical need for the city. But once again, when you look at recreational opportunities in general, communities view these as very positive and items that could actually recruit and attract people to your community as well. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. And I think we've went over all these items right here. It is important to note attracting additional residents to our community is very, very important as well. In addition, we feel that indoor recreation centers, and I'm going to stress this, depending on the location, could attract additional development within your community, and that's important from the city's tax base consideration as well. It's also been mentioned earlier this evening as far as addition potential to help with the tourism industry as well. In essence, when you look at the proposed indoor recreation center, we think it has a lot of potential to help the city out as far as attracting new residents, help with tourism, and also facilitate additional development as well. So Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, as far as the initial concept, I want to say this is initial work that we've done on this. As far as the proposed location, what you see up there on the big board is the existing Pella Sports Park. What we're proposing is the initial concept is the indoor recreation center would be located in the northwest corner of the complex here. Now, a couple items of note on this. What this plan would also entail would be the extension of University Street from 240th Avenue out to 250th Avenue. In addition, we would also extend Baseline Drive down here to connect as well. So there'd be two accesses to the Pella Sports Park as associated with this plan. It is important to note as we talk about conceptual ideas, the University Street extension has been shown in the city's comprehensive plan for some time on it's identified as a critical transportation need. And I would say when you look at the Baseline Drive extension, anyone that's been out to the Pella Sports Park during the summer months It's got the crossover from Little League games to soccer games, knows the traffic congestion that takes place on Old Highway 163. So what this would be identified as a second access into the Pella Sports Complex here. It would also suit well for the indoor recreation center. So the recreation center would sit on the new University Street extension, and point to the north would be the face of the building. Now, as a part of University Street extension, we also envision an extension of the city's trail system as well. There'd be a recreation trail that would lead out to the complex as well. And ultimately, where the plans would be, now it's not included in our project, but again, we're in the conceptual phase again. So when we talk about trail extensions, and this can be done in the future, what the goal would be is to connect University or the new indoor recreation center and the Pella Sports Complex down at least to Caldwell Park as far as a recreation, and potentially ultimately from city staff standpoint, and again, these would be future plans, it'd be nice to connect to the Red Rock trails as well. By doing the trail extension out here, we've already got a trail extension within the complex as well. We think that'd be a very nice amenity, and it would also allow for the pedestrian traffic to access the location or the Pella Sports Park as well as the proposed indoor recreation center.
So let me just say something. As Michelle mentioned, she left, I guess, but she mentioned the soccer. If you look at this and think about nothing else but extending University and the north-south road, that is a huge need. I have granddaughters that are playing soccer, and on Saturday mornings, the line is out onto the highway waiting to get into the complex because we have, at the time change for soccer games, we have all the people coming to the 10:15 game and all the people leaving from the 9, and so there's two-way traffic that is almost impossible to navigate. So we need a second entrance into that sports park in a very bad way. So that's a critical piece of this concept for that to get done also.
Very good point there. So again, and with that, the second entrance in as well, and then if you were to look back at the city's comprehensive plan, we have called for the University Street extension as well. So again, the concept is location of the indoor recreation center would be the northwest corner of the Pella Sports Park. There'd be two entrances in there, and then also the University Street extension project as well as extension of Baseline Drive would be a part of the project as well. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now what we have up here on the next slide is just some renderings that we have on the outside of the building. Obviously, these are conceptual, preliminary in nature, but we thought it was important to visualize what an indoor recreation center would actually look like as well. Well, let's go ahead, please, Mandy. And again, when we talk about some of the components that we've had on a preliminary basis, again, we talked about gymnasium space. That was identified as a need during our discussions on the community center. What we have here is 3 full-size gyms with seating. There'd also be a multi-purpose gym as well. We'd have areas in the recreation center. What's common in other recreation centers is areas what we identify as cardio, workout, exercise studios. So this could be a variety of workouts. It could be everything from exercise machines to elliptical machines they have, and there's also free weight areas as well. The proposal that we have this evening also involves a competition swimming pool. Anyone that's been a part of the Pella swim team that the city actually manages as well know that's a huge item for our youth. And I believe the numbers that I had recently that the typical attendance on the Pella swim team ranges anywhere from about 110 on an annual basis up to 130 youth as well. So that is an item that we have heard about in the past as well. The next item that we have heard is we've heard about from families as far as recreation pools. Specifically, if you're to go out to the city's indoor pool, one of the items that we receive common frequently questions about is a recreation pool. Young families like the zero-depth recreational pools with splash pads, water slides, and party rooms as well. That's been an item that we have heard. And again, typically we hear about those types of things for folks that have young children and families as well. So from a standpoint, we've included it as preliminary concept, so please keep that in mind. Again, the indoor walking track is a huge item in Pella. That's an item that we hear frequently about is a need for indoor walking space or walking trails or the ability to do that. And then what we've also included is a rock climbing wall. The facility that we're talking about has a lot of amenities. It also has kids play zone, and then of course we have the typical amenities that you would anticipate with an indoor recreation center that would be included. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now overall, kind of a summary of everything that we had on the components is shown on the floor plan that we have here. This is the preliminary floor plan for the indoor recreation center. Again, you can see the concept plan, the competition swimming pool, the recreational swimming pool. You would have located right here would be the 3 gymnasiums for basketball. We have a multi-purpose gymnasium down here. And included in this area would be workout space as well. Kids' activities, play zones would be located down here, rock climbing wall, lobby located up in this area. And then there'd be an upper level where the walking track would be, the indoor walking track would be located right here as well. So the idea would be as you walk, you'd be able to see the recreational activities that were taking place below. And that's been a very popular concept in other recreational centers as well. So again, it has a lot of recreational opportunities and amenities that is included in the preliminary concept plan that we have this evening. Well, let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, when we talk about it, again, I want to stress this is a concept plan. The idea is to solicit discussion on here and talk about options. And one of the critical things that we want to talk about is we want to make sure as we make decisions on the indoor recreation center that we include ideas, concepts that council wants to explore. So far, when we look at the proposed indoor recreation center, it's been, what we have is just an initial concept tonight. So please keep this in mind as we talk about finances and go into the next phase on it. But I would say, from our standpoint, when you look at indoor recreation centers, and we're going to show you some other facilities that have been built around the state of Iowa, when you look at the cost of the project on it, what I would say that's entirely dependent on the amount of support that we receive for the project. It's critical in Iowa that the indoor recreation centers have. There hasn't been a city, my understanding, maybe there has, it's just a smaller project, but when you look at significant projects, they involve partnerships, both of the school levels, county levels, potentially private entities. All those are options as well. But when you look at it from the city standpoint, when you look at the facility, that's really dependent on the amount of support it receives, both from the city and other parties. So please keep that in mind. It's also important to note as we talk about indoor recreation centers, I believe is an initial concept, it's easily scalable. So the key thing is we talk about size and scale and finances, they're intertwined, and they're also very much related to the amount of support that we receive for projects. The key takeaway is not on necessarily the total cost of the facility, it's what the city's contribution is going to be, as well as our operational responsibilities for the facility as we establish the financial parameters for the project. So please keep that in mind that as far as size and scale, what we're talking about, that can easily be aligned with the city's financial plans. And that's entirely up to the city's contribution is entirely up to the mayor and council on this matter as well. So when we look at it for discussion purposes, I want to stress this is initial discussion purposes. When you look at everything that you've seen, realistically, the cost of this project, which includes the University Street extension, could be anywhere, and I'm talking about the total cost, not the city's contribution, total cost from $25 million up to $50 million. That depends on the size and scale. That depends on what the appropriate level that the city council potentially approves for an allocation of the project. And it also depends on the partnerships that we enter into as well. So please keep that in mind that when you look at the plans up there, because of the scaling, that realistically that's where we think the project could realistically end up at. Now let's go ahead, please, Mandy. When we look at other facilities here and in your packet, I do want to point out, and the error was not intentional, but we did have, it was brought to our attention, we meant to put in the 2020 census. Our information that we've been working on has been focused off the 2010 census because the 2020 came out recently. So your packet had 2020 census, but it had in the 2010 population. The numbers you see there is the estimated, well actually 2020 for these communities. But Waukee, back in 2009, they opened an indoor recreation center, and their population, I believe at 2010 was right around 13,000. 10 years later, not at all attributed to the indoor recreation center. There's a lot of other factors up there, but that whole area is exploded. And it's right just shy of 24,000 in population right now. At the time, a 72,000 square foot facility The cost of that was right at $15 million. And you can see what they have here, the number of gymnasiums they have is 2. They have an indoor walking track. They also have a rec pool, as well as the competition swimming pool. Indianola was opened 2 years later. Their 2020 census is just about 16,000. On that, there's about a 62,000 square foot facility, and the total cost of the facility was right at $15 million. And again, as you can see, it's very, very comparable to the Waukee facility. It's just a little bit smaller. Again, the cost was at $15 million. The most recent one that we have is comparable in the state of Iowa is the city of Marion. Their town of just under 45,000. If you look at the square footage of their community, right at 75,000, was opened up in 2021. The cost of the facility was right at $20 million. So when we talk about potential and then stressing total cost, and again, this is conceptual in nature, there's going to be a deep dive on all this, on these items. When we talk about the cost of facilities, where we're coming up with it is if you take the cost of the Marion facility and say, be something similar in size plus the University Street, we think realistically that it could be somewhere in the $25 million potentially, all the way up to a facility that is large and that has initially lots of amenities, up to 125,000 square foot facility could be in the range of $50 million. That's the range that we have, that we've established on it. And again, I want to say from a financial standpoint, these are conceptual in nature. The point tonight is to make sure that we have a conceptual discussion. But as far as the financial range, that's entirely dependent on the support for the project, both from the City of Pella's level as well as our partners on this potential project. In addition, it depends on the size and scale, and that's good. Both of those items will be determined by the Pella City Council. So with that, Mr. Mayor, we know that was a lot of information to digest tonight, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that the council may have on this item.
Thank you, Mike. That was a good job. Comments, questions?
The preliminary blueprint and the renderings that we have here are the 50 million, right?
It's 100. It's roughly everything that you saw up on the big board, Mandy.
125,000
Yeah,
square
that's
feet.
maybe about 125,000 square foot facility.
Well, I do think that university, and we have gone around quite a few years now, university does indeed need to be extended. Now, whether we make it a separate project or part of this indoor rec, whatever we can chunk off. But I'm all in favor of the University Street extension. It'll really open a lot of that area up.
We've got to do something. We're way behind the 8 ball on recreation, indoor recreation. Like Mike was pointing out, it needs to be scaled to what we can digest, but we're playing catch up, but both on the cultural side, the community center, and also on the rec side. Both are necessary for a good social fabric.
Yeah, I love it. It's going to be great for the community.
We just gotta pay for it.
That's the easy part.
Yeah, right.
He's got a printing machine.
Right.
Is this that free money that Mark keeps
Yeah, that's
talking
right.
to me
It's
about?
free money.
I keep looking for that money tree in our greenhouse. I
Well,
can't find it.
actually, I'm referring to, there's nice gray heads in this room. After World War II, our country faced an enormous amount of debt. And we handled that by what's happening right now, keeping interest rates down and paying off that with inflated dollars. And what blows me away is just a very few short years after that, this huge audacious plan called the Eisenhower Interstate System was started up at a mind-boggling potential cost, but it was looking to the future.
Yeah, I am not opposed. This is a great concept. Just gotta pay for it. The devil will be in the details on that. And I don't think it's any surprise that I strongly support the community center. I think that's been put on the back burner a long time. I like a patient, prioritized approach rather than millions of dollars of debt. We also have a school bond issue that the school's going to be looking at. I think these are all things that we have to look at community-wise and how much we chunk off. Don't get me wrong, I love the concept, I love the building, just gotta pay for it. And we have to prioritize, I think.
Mike, what you mentioned earlier about the possibility of a referendum. What creates the legality of when you need a referendum or when it's a choice?
Well, as far as the referendum, and we'll be dealing in much more detail, but the rule of thumb is referendums are tied to revenue sources on it. So in this particular project, and I'd say for both the community center and also the indoor recreation center, you may have multiple votes on it as far as the revenue sources. One of them could be, for instance, our local option renewal. And you look at potential categories where those funds could be expended on the projects as well. That's one potential option. A second option is under Iowa law, it's entirely going to be paid by property taxes, for instance, and not abated by local option revenues on that. That would likely trigger a community referendum on it. So it really depends on the mechanism the city council chooses to pay for the project and what's associated with the revenue sources, and each one of them have their different legalities.
So did you say it's required if it's 100% from property taxes?
Yeah, down for example purposes, and this gets somewhat confusing on it, and we'll be diving much more into it, but generally speaking, if it's 100% property taxes, similar to what the school district's doing on it, under Iowa law, I believe that any buildings over $700,000 of that, if you're going to be issuing debt over $700,000, requires a community referendum. That's if it's exclusively paid by property taxes. There's different requirements if there's other revenue sources associated in that as well as far as referendums. For instance, with local option sales and services taxes, if a portion of that revenue stream is used to abate or issue bonds off, there's different requirements for that as well. But if it's just strictly property taxes, in other words, you weren't considering any other type of revenue source for the city's contribution, it would likely require that referendum because the issue would likely be over $700,000.
I'm assuming that there'll be community input meetings on this.
What I would state, kind of counter to this, our process that we undertake to go through and make decisions on this, that's entirely up to the mayor and council on it as well. So when we talk about public input, receiving public input on these projects, I would counter that's really at the discretion of the mayor and council and the information that you folks need to make an informed decision.
Okay.
There's already been some focus groups, haven't there?
As far as
These concepts were done by the...
I think a fair statement is probably the best way to explain it is when we went through and did the city's long-term facilities plan, we conducted focus groups, and one of the critical items that we saw early on through the input that we received is the clear need for recreation and indoor recreation in the community as well as the performing arts. And I think it's been stated multiple times this evening, they were both viewed as very important. So as far as the focus groups that have been done and conducted, soliciting input from folks on it by the city, those would have been done associated with the community center.
Okay, anything else? So much more to come, a lot more details. This is just a concept. I probably get asked about this more than any other subject by people around town. A lot of support, tremendous support for recreation facility. So I think we need to keep the conversation moving forward.
The next step will be what? Financials?
We're gonna try to keep the process moving forward, but one of the key items that we have is the timing issue here. Is we're currently in the process of working with an engineer on that cost comparison between the new Performing Arts Center and the existing community center. And so before we get too far into the financial discussion, we want to make sure that we have all the components rounded up that council wants to look at. So we're pressing on the engineer to get those numbers back sooner, but as soon as we have that, our intention is to proceed straight with move into the fiscal capacity stage. So to answer your question, it's yes, but we want to make sure that we have all the components that we've asked
That
for.
would have been very beneficial.
Yes, yes,
Key component.
I agree.
Could I ask just an informational question?
Yes.
The extension of University Street, the road work that you're looking at, what would the cost of that be?
Preliminary, we talked about $5 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 to 5.5 with baseline drive.
Right, and that was, I think, including the bike path also.
That's
I think that included a bike path out there also,
Okay.
Harvard, right away for it. I'm going by memory, but I think that's,
Thank you, I just didn't have
Yep.
any idea where the scale was. Thank you.
yeah.
Fred said it runs about $600 a foot. And what he would.
That's according to Brad Udemark.
600 a foot?
600 a foot, street, sewer, water, not bike path. That'd be actually.
Yeah, getting the right of way will be significant also. That's what we've been battling over the years.
Well, talking to the fields of our futures group that worked their tail off to make the outdoor, the fields that we have now, there always was, in that original concept, an indoor facility planned for that location, for out there. Or not planned, but discussed. And they are incredibly excited about the prospect of having an indoor facility out next to the outdoor facility. I think from an outdoor facility, we have done a fantastic job with that sports park and meeting the needs of our community. I think we are woefully short when it comes to indoor rec opportunities. And, you know, you can talk about priorities and this and that, but as I said, this is the number one question I get from people around town. We all move in different circles, and you guys talk to different people, and there's all kinds of priorities. There's tremendous interest and support for something like this in this community. So
I guess the
we
key
are
is the support.
we are going to pursue it.
I guess the key is the support.
And the support will be tremendous.
That'll be the key.
That is the key.
I don't know
As
if
Mike
anybody
said-
out wouldn't want this, Mayor.
I think what Mike said, the key thing he said is when we look at the cost, I hear people say $50 million. You gotta look at what the city's contribution is. Think about where we live. We live in Pella. There was a $23 million new campus built at Pella Christian High School, paid for in 3 years. There was a $13 million renovation to Pella Christian Grade School, paid for in 2 or 3 years. We got almost a $2 million new all-inclusive playground, paid for. We can do stuff in Pella. When artificial turf was becoming popular, I could not find another community in the world that had 3 artificial turf fields but Pella, Iowa. So we can do great things here if we set our mind to it, and we get the support of the community to get these things done. So we can have all the naysaying we want, you can't do it, you can't afford. Well, let's find out and make sure we can't before we say that.
I don't think anybody has said we can't, Mayor.
Well,
the whole thing, and I know you're trying to sell this stuff, but the whole thing is my concern, and I love the concept. I've said that several times. But we gotta pay for it, and that's where it's coming from, and I will certainly be much more content when we know the figures.
Exactly. But I'm just saying.
Bottom line.
Let's not say,
And.
let's not say we can't do it before
I didn't
we
say,
try.
when did I say
You didn't,
once?
you didn't.
Okay,
I've heard-
thank you.
I've heard comments from other people.
Okay.
We can't do it. Well, I want to be proven wrong that we can't do it before I accept that. History is littered with people that said they couldn't do something because they got steamrolled by the people that did it.
We have one more item here. Could we get on to that, please?
We will when I'm ready.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of times in these meetings where I've allowed you to say what you
I
wanted to
agree.
say
I agree.
and let you do it, so I can have my time.
Yes, sir.
Anything else from anyone else? All right, let's move on.
Okay. Yes, sir. What we're here to talk tonight about, and this is more of a timing issue request that we have tonight. We have a request from the city's police department, and this deals with the security, surveillance, and access control for this building this evening. And as background, we had this project, actually a camera system, a surveillance system scheduled for this building in the next fiscal year, which would be 2022 to 2023, which would be on July 1st of next year. And looking at it and talking with Chief McShahey, there's been some issues with the current surveillance system that we have. And in discussions that we've had at the staff level, our recommendation would be to consider moving that item up one fiscal year. So it'd be a timing issue. From a financial standpoint, I want to explain how we do things at the City of Pella. When we do budgets, we don't just budget on one calendar year or one fiscal year for the general fund. We balance budgets over 3 fiscal years on it as well. So we've always got long-term planning at play here. So from our standpoint, this is purely a timing issue that we have at hand, and the request to move this up from 2023 to the current fiscal year of 2022 is what the police department's making. Before we did that and authorized it at city staff level, we wanted to make sure we discussed it at the city council level and to address any concerns on the request. And with this, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask Captain Hossey to actually fill in some of the details and talk about the need and the issues with the security system and why we're making a request to actually move it up one fiscal year. So Captain Hossey, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. One of the biggest things that we wanted to get across was that it's really kind of 2 systems that are built into one. One of those is controlled access. As you might notice, the back door here, it has the controlled access card reader door. You see these at a lot of the schools, Vermeer, Pelicorp, many of the organizations around the community have that controlled access, that key card entry. It's that side of it, and then it's also the surveillance and camera side of it. Our cameras here are, I believe, 25, 26 years old. The system is about that old as well. It's a very old, antiquated system that has really outlived its lifetime, and probably a few years ago outlived its lifetime. What that also does is it also collects all of our video evidence for our jail, for our interview rooms, for the different aspects of the criminal side of things as well. So between the camera system and the controlled access, what that does is it really adds a site security and accountability for our system. The controlled access, it logs who comes and goes out of those different secure areas, specifically like our evidence room, and just throughout the building as well. So that also ties back into our accreditation system, or our accreditation process, and that's that controlled access and making sure that we have the checks and balances and the accountability in place to maintain those secure areas that we need to throughout the building. The camera system, again, it would put a camera system on the front of the building and the exterior of the building. It would really enhance that as well for the safety and security of our officers, for our communications, personnel that are leaving the building in the evening. And it would also add security for the parking lot out back and the fire department and the public safety side of things. We are very blessed here in Pella, but there have been many instances throughout the rest of the country where things have occurred just outside of police departments that add that safety and security, especially for our staff that are our civilian staff that may be leaving in the evening as well. It also has a build-out aspect that, that camera system that we will be able to, in the future, should we want to add some additional cameras throughout whether it be throughout the city or just further around the building, that would be able to enhance that as well. But that safety side of things is really that important part and the security of our building. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have as well.
So just from a budgeting standpoint, Paul, when we get together in March to look at our 22-23 budget, will that be that much lower then? Will we not have a number in for that it won't be filled with something else, so to speak?
I would have to defer that to Chief McChee, for sure. It won't be filled with this. That item, if we're able to move this one forward, obviously we would request these funds again for this item. Yes.
Basically we're going a year ahead, stealing, I should say stealing, that's not should doing a police thing, but we're taking from reserves that have already been existing because we would have that to be paid. But so usually that means that things should be a little bit leaner than the following year.
Yes. Again, I'd have to defer to him for that, for sure, but I know that as we prepare that budget, this was one of those items that we saw that's in the future that we really need at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have to go through a budget amendment process with this? Not then.
Well, it's according to the city staff. What we typically do and how we handle these items is we do one amendment a year, and usually, if you recall, it's usually right around May of each year. It's intended to adjust for projects, timing difference projects. So there's quite often, not only in the police department, but we have construction projects that were budgeted in one fiscal year and occur in a different fiscal year. So we would anticipate that we would address this in May of this year formally by amending our budget to actually transfer funds from one fiscal year to the other on it. So that would be the budget amendment. How this item would be handled administratively, if council did not have concerns about it, we would approve it administratively according to the quotes that you see up on the board with their no bid, the low bid item that they have. So
Paul, have you looked at all, these three companies, they will be representatives of larger systems? Have you investigated the systems at all and asked other people about them?
Yes, we have. We got references from all of them. Actually, several of Verkada is the only one that doesn't operate currently in Pella. Communication Innovators has done some stuff for some other city departments and have done some things for Vermeer as well. Their project, and SCI Communications has also done projects within the City of Pella and other entities, neighboring agencies as well. The Sheriff's Department, the City of Knoxville have used SCI Communications as well.
And they were pleased with the firmware, if I can put it that way, because these folks will purchase, install, but the support is going to come from the supplying company.
Yes, SCI Communications, which is the little bit up there, they run a Panasonic product is what they use. We use Panasonic products for our body cams and our in-car cameras as well, so we're pretty confident in that in their product as well.
Very good, thank you.
Anything else? We go consensus to get it done now, to hate them now?
Get it right.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Hopkins, Orr. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Seabout.
Yes.
Motion passed. We are